Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm a member of Citizens Climate Classes DC. Citizens Climate Classes DC is a growing local community that empowers individuals to address climate change by learning and sharing sustainable life skills together. Sometimes sustainable living can be a bit overwhelming, especially when we start to say to ourselves, I'm only one person. What can I really do to combat this huge issue? And the answer, fortunately for you, is a lot. But even though you can do a lot and you can encourage people around you to do a lot, remember that we are practicing sustainable living. We are not perfecting sustainable living. So sometimes you are going to make a mistake or buy more things that are encased in plastic than you really wanted to. But it's just a matter of starting to think in a way where you are making decisions and hopefully making decisions that lead you to reuse and waste less. I hope all of you out there are doing well and staying safe and healthy and sane. I know I'm personally trying to keep a bit of a routine with waking up at the same time and getting exercise and getting my work done. But I know I've been occasionally slipping up. Last week, I did have a day where I realized I forgot to put on deodorant, but the next day I remembered to put on deodorant. So it's the small victories in this kind of uncertain and strange time. You'll all notice that we're on the YouTube live platform, but today we have actually turned off the comments since there's a bit of an uptick in trolling. We want to make sure that everyone here experiences this class also in a safe way where they can learn some excellent skills, but not have any sort of unpleasant or unwanted encounters should there be any trolls watching. So today's agenda, we are going to be cooking. We're going to do 3 recipes, and there's a lot of wonderful sustainable recipes out there. So I couldn't pick an actual dish. Instead, what I decided to do was pick an ingredient to focus on. And today's star ingredient is chickpeas. I picked chickpeas because it's a great protein supplement. So you can put it into a dish if you are trying to go vegetarian or even vegan, and get those get the supplement that you need. But it's also a really, really cool food. It is kind of a superfood. As a quick fun fact, the chickpea is super efficient in terms of water use. And in fact, in most parts of the world where they don't get a lot of water, it is still a food that can be predominantly rain grown. It also is the sort of food that keeps giving, so it releases nitrogen into the soil, which is excellent because it helps to replenish the soil for the next growing season. Oftentimes we put really harsh fertilizers onto our soil, which then makes it more difficult for the next round of crops to go. So chickpeas, pretty cool. All right, let's get started. A few of the kitchen utensils that you will need for this tutorial are going to be knives, spatula, and bowls or other plates. But another thing, and one of the bigger things that you're going to want to consider having or already have, would be a food processor. Fortunately, we will be making hummus, falafel, and we will be making a chickpea salad today. Fortunately, if you do not have a food processor, you do have other options for ways to blend up these recipes, but do keep in mind that 2 of the 3 recipes, so the falafel and the hummus, are going to be pretty heavy on the blending. You can use a blender. If you choose to use a blender, I would recommend putting it on a lower setting, taking the lid off, and then using a spatula to make sure that you are thoroughly mixing the ingredients as you go. Because the blade is at the bottom and because the blender is kind of a V shape and pushes everything into the bottom and is usually used for liquids, you just need to make sure that everything on top is getting circulated to the bottom. You can also use a good old-fashioned masher. So if you have something that you use for, say, mashed potatoes or even a fork, that will work. It will definitely increase the amount of time that it takes takes to do the recipes. However, if you are feeling a bit pent up and looking for a good workout, definitely a good workout. Or if you are living with kids who need something to do, it could be a great way to bring them into the kitchen and help them to get mashing those chickpeas. All right, so we are doing, like I said a bit earlier, 3 different recipes, all starring chickpeas. And a lot of the ingredients are quite similar for each of these recipes. We will be doing a hummus recipe, a chickpea salad, and then falafel. So potentially by putting all these together, you're going to have a bit of an appetizer, dinner, salad going on. And then I have a few fun facts about how you can turn some of what's left over into potential dessert ingredients. All right, so let's get started with the hummus. For the hummus, you're going to need 2 cloves of garlic, you will need your chickpeas. For this particular recipe, it does call for canned chickpeas. You can use dried chickpeas. And in fact, as I'm sure you've already kind of noticed, that would probably create a lot less waste because you'd be getting more and less packaging. However, though, especially during COVID-19, we don't all have access to the same ingredients. So once again, we are practicing, not perfecting, sustainable living. If you're only able to get a hold of canned chickpeas, they are a wonderful economical option to still have a very healthy meal. All right, our next ingredients. We'll need salt, tahini or sesame paste, juice of a lemon. You'll use 2 tablespoons of water or liquid from the chickpeas. So that is one advantage to using canned chickpeas. You can use ground cumin or coriander, depending on which flavor, or maybe a little bit of both. And then we'll also need some olive oil. All right. So this is actually quite an easy recipe. Really what it is you're going to take everything that I just put on the counter. We're going to put it into our food processors or blenders, and then we're going to mix it up. So let's get started. Now, as discussed, we will need some of the liquid from the chickpeas. So right now I'm just straining this into a bowl. Then I'm going to pour the chickpeas in evenly. Right? All right, I'll take my 2 cloves of garlic, also add those into the mix. Have a teaspoon of salt. Be a little bit careful. You're not going to want to oversalt your hummus, so we don't want to do too much of a pour over. right? Now the tahini sauce is actually something that we will add a bit later after it has been blended, or after all the other ingredients have been blended. So we will add this in last for those of you keeping track. For the lemon, a quick trick. Before you juice a lemon, you of course can use a juicer if you have one, but if you don't, in order to get the maximum amount of juice out of the lemon, you want to roll the lemon back and forth under your hand until you can smell the kind of zesty lemon smell, okay? So I will demonstrate this, and what this does is it basically is kind of like on the inside juicing the lemon. So you're going to want to wait until you smell the zesty smell and until the lemon's going to get a bit softer. And this will allow you to pull most of the lemon juice out of the lemon. All right, let's do this. Make sure you're not just rolling the exact same side. You want to kind of massage the entire lemon. The process does not take that long. I'm already kind of starting to smell the lemon among all the other delicious things that I'm whipping up right now. All right, and then with your knife, you will want to first pierce the lemon head on, because now you've really brought all the juices to the center. You don't want to relive any sort of Seinfeld episodes and end up winking at a bunch of people. So you'll want to do that so you don't squirt juice all over the place, and so that you're able to put all of the juice in. So I'll demonstrate. Make sure that once you've done that, you just kind of glide your knife right on through. No need for a lot of pressure. It's almost good if you just kind of, get lemons and then maybe wait until they're just really quite ripe. It's a lot easier. All right, so there we have it. And then before you're going to add any of the juice, you're first going to want to juice into a bowl. So this is actually the bowl that I used to hold the garlic, so it's totally fine. Because you'll want to catch the seeds and everything first and get all of that in there. All right. Okay, should be good. No need to throw away those food scraps immediately. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but there are some fun options for what you can do with peels and lemon seeds. So first we're going to want to get those seeds out of here. Tricky. I was practicing this recipe, and the last lemon I had a ton of pulp in it that ended up coming out. Or maybe I was squeezing too aggressively. Who's to say? Really taking the workout thing seriously. All right, so we'll just keep those seeds right there. All right, now we've got our bowl of lemon juice, which we're going to add. Okay, and now this is the part where we get to add in the tablespoon or a couple tablespoons, either of water, so if you had used dried chickpeas, or of the liquid from the chickpea can. So 1, 2. Now we're going to do a teaspoon of your choice, cumin or coriander. I'm gonna go with cumin today. Again, just like the salt, we don't need to overdo it. So easy does it. There we go. All right, and then 2 tablespoons of olive oil. All right. Put the garlic back. All right, now, as I said a bit earlier, what we'll do is we'll first combine what we have just put into the food processor or blender or masher. You would just combine all these into a large bowl and start to mash away and get everything combined. So we'll get started with that right now. I would recommend going for a low setting. The thing about these recipes is food processors and blenders are very, very powerful. You're not going to need to blend for probably more than 30 seconds or a minute at a time. And it makes sense to kind of blend in stages. You don't want to necessarily do a full combination because a lot of these recipes are adding things one at a time. So low setting, blend for a little while. We'll wait till it's a bit creamy, then we'll add our tahini sauce, and then we'll kind of finish up the job that way. All right, I'd recommend using a spatula, going in, getting some things off the sides after just a few seconds of blending. Keep in mind, food processors are sharp, so do not stick your hand in there to do this job. That would not be good. And the hummus definitely will not taste good. All right, blend a little bit more. Okay, now it's time to add in the last few things. We're going to add in the tahini, and then we'll kind of get that last bit, so we'll get a nice creamy hummus. All right. That, unfortunately, we cannot reuse. All right. We'll do a 1/3 cup of tahini. Use our spatula, get as much in there as we can. Go. All right. Okay, and we are almost done. This is an entire hummus recipe. And it's great because sometimes we go to the store and we are really craving things like falafel or hummus. It's excellent to put on veggies or with pita, but oftentimes we end up buying it in plastic packaging. So now you have a recipe, so you are able to make your own hummus with less plastic packaging and still have a delicious and very healthy treat. So let's get this finished up. Again, we'll go in, just double check that we don't have any stray chickpeas that have gotten away from us. Smells good. All right. All right, and there you have it. A nice hummus recipe that you can add to, that you can have for veggies, that you can have for pita. Delicious treat. Hummus also, the hummus that you've just made will last for up to a week in the refrigerator, and it could last to a few months in the freezer. So if you end up making a bit too much, then you will still have the treat much later as long as you freeze it properly. Okay. Now we're going to switch pace a little bit, and we are going to go over to making a delicious chickpea salad and vinaigrette dressing to put on top of that salad. So I did a lot of my prep prior to getting on this live stream. So I won't be going through and cutting everything up, but just as I did before, we'll go through the things that we will need for this. So, as I'm sure you've already guessed, since it seems to be the featured ingredient, you'll need to have a can of chickpeas, just one can. We'll have a half of a medium cucumber, already chopped. We'll do a handful of halved cherry tomatoes. Half of a bell pepper. A half of a red onion, chopped thinly. A half cup chopped Kalamata olives. And a half cup feta cheese. And so this is just 4 ounces. Quickly, I'm sure that you've been encountering this, but a lot of restaurants are closed at this time with only takeout or delivery options. And so it's great to support local businesses, and I'm so happy to be able to do that. I did order in last night as I was prepping for this. I ran out of energy to cook for myself. But what I decided to do as I was prepping was I took the plastic containers that some of my food arrived in, and now I have brand new Tupperware. So something to keep in mind for a way to reuse, even in a time where we're definitely seeing a lot more plastic in our lives. Okay, the 2 other things that we're going to need for this will be salt, and black pepper. So this is super easy. You're just going to take a large bowl, and first we're going to get our chickpeas drained. For this one, you don't need any more of the chickpea water. So draining it is enough. First, put that in the bowl. And then we just mix in the rest of the ingredients. So green pepper, tomatoes, cucumber, olives, onion. Might go a little lighter on the onion. It's kind of a big onion that I bought. Start with that. Can add a bit back in for flavor as we want to. Then feta. Never go light on the feta. Once again, plastic container can be used to contain new other things. Also, a very small planter if you're looking to start growing your own garden. All right, and then you just mix all of these ingredients together. And now you have your salad. Looks to me like a salad that would be probably delicious enough to eat on its own, but in case you'd like to have a salad dressing to go with it, we will be making that as well. The only thing you'll need for this, because you're actually, instead of mixing it up, you're going to be shaking it up. So getting a jar with a lid. I actually, yesterday morning, finished up the jam, the last of the jam in my fridge on my toast. So I decided to keep the jar, and now I'm going to use it to cook the lemon parsley vinaigrette for our salad. So let's go through the things that we will need besides a jar. All right, we're going to bring the olive oil back. We'll need a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. You'll need 2 tablespoons of white wine or cider vinegar. We will need some lemon juice. So we'll be taking a little bit left of what we had already squeezed out. We'll take some freshly chopped parsley, 1 tablespoon of freshly chopped parsley, and 1 tablespoon of dried or fresh mint. So here is the mint. Parsley is back in the fridge. We are. And of course, some salt and pepper. All right, let's get everything combined. 1/4 cup extra virgin olive oil. Two tablespoons. Of the white wine. A cooking wine should be good enough. Now we're going to add in our lemon juice. So we will take the lemon, where we use most of the juice. We're going to squeeze just the remainder out. Both of the halves. Oh, some seeds. Again, have to clear out those seeds. Then we'll add that in. All right, now on to the parsley. We only need a tablespoon, so a little bit will go quite a long way. Just a little bit. There we go. Get this chopped up. Just want to get it chopped up. Let that flavor kind of come out. Some of those bigger leaves. Go. Okay, add that in too. Next, we've got the mint. Again, just a tablespoon. A little bit is gonna go a long way. So just a couple large leaves should be just fine. We really just want to get the flavor. Mint's kind of overwhelming, so want to get that hint, but we don't want to turn our salad into a mint salad. Oops, there. Okay. And then finally, some salt and pepper. Just a dash, just an absolute dash of it. Salt, you definitely don't want to over salt dressing, so just a little bit. Add that on in. That might even be too much. I'll put the rest in there. Same with your pepper, just a dash. Don't need to overdo it at all. Right about there. Add that on in. All right, and now for the fun part. And another part, if you've got a kid who wants to help you out in the fridge, or a partner or a spouse, we're gonna put that lid on really, really tight and shake it up. All right, and then it'll be time to add it over the salad. Now, I actually am not going to add this on the salad just yet because I'm not quite ready to eat, but it's ready to go for whenever I want to. But before I would add it onto my salad, I would also add in just a little bit of pepper on the salad. just a dash of salt on the salad. Whew, it's way more than a dash. Do just a pinch right there. Okay. And now you have a chickpea salad and a lemon vinaigrette dressing to go with it. All right. And now we're kind of moving into our main event, our entree. We'll be discussing how to make falafel next. As I alluded to a bit earlier in this, a lot of what we have to do for both the hummus and the falafel is use either a blender or a food processor or masher. So we won't go through the process of mashing just because you've seen how it works. I will walk you through how the ingredients are added. But the bigger thing is definitely going to be the frying part of falafel. So we'll discuss that. First, as we've been doing, let's go through what we're going to need for falafel. I did say a little bit earlier that dried chickpeas would be a good alternative if you don't want to use canned or if you are really worried about creating a lot of extra waste. However, I wasn't able to get a hold of dried chickpeas, and so I did end up using cans. I whipped this up just a bit earlier today, so some of the ingredients are going to be maybe already used. So let's go through what you'll need. All right, can of dried chickpeas. You'll need a half bouquet of parsley. And right here, if you go and you buy a full bouquet, this is going to be roughly half. It's a little less because I added in a few leaves to that salad dressing, but generally that's about how much you're going to need. We will need, you can use either a bouquet or you can use dried coriander. So what I ended up doing was I ended up just using a spice. I already had it in my house. You'll need a half of sweet onion. Here we have our half. You'll want to chop that up though before you use it. We'll also be using cumin powder. Once again, our favorites, salt and pepper. 5 cloves of garlic. 1 lemon, which I've actually used my 2 lemons, so envision a lemon. And then a half tablespoon of baking soda or baking powder, either will do. Another thing that you might want to have on hand would be flour, and that's because once you get all of these combined, sometimes you'll end up with a paste that's a bit too liquidy to be able to form into the falafel balls to be able to fry and then eat. Now, we are all seeing that there's a lot of grocery stores with empty shelves, so do not feel like you have to use your regular baking flour. In fact, when I was making this recipe a bit earlier, I used corn flour instead, did the trick. I ended up adding in about 2 tablespoons, and that really helped to get everything to, it helped to get the ingredients to stick together. So as we've done before, you will take all of these ingredients and you will start with the chickpeas as the base. You will put those into the food processor, blender, or a large bowl to be mashed. And then you'll add in the rest of the ingredients one by one. I would recommend starting with the chickpeas as a base, getting those kind of nicely whipped. Once again, you don't want to go too far, just as we did with the hummus, and end up with something that's already kind of a mush, because then it will get really, really liquidy toward the end. I would go solids to spices. Start with your chickpeas. Add in your onion and your garlic. Then you'll add in your parsley, coriander, cumin, salt, and pepper. And you'll end up with this. This is the falafel dough. Get a few things out of the way. So this is the falafel dough that you'll end up with. As you'll notice, it's got a nice kind of consistency, so all very well blended together. It was a little bit more liquidy, as I said earlier, so I did end up adding some corn starch to it. Flour would be fine. Chickpea flour also works just fine and is also on brand for what we're doing. Another thing you can do is if you have a little bit of extra time, if it still is a bit liquidy, I would recommend not over adding flour because it will really dry out your chickpeas. So what you'll want to do is you might want to pop it in the fridge for a little while, which will help to kind of draw out that oil and solidify your paste. So let's go for making the chickpea balls. As I said earlier, I already prepared a few of them. These I've kept in the refrigerator. They're ready to fry. We'll make just a couple more so you can kind of see. I laid them out on wax paper because it is a non-stick surface and will be a lot easier to move around. So I'm going to make a little bit of space for a couple of the new falafel balls for frying. Before I do that, another thing you'll need to do is we'll need to start prepping our oil for cooking. So you just need a frying pan with a little bit of vegetable oil in it. Ooh, don't want to spill that all over the place. So you'll want to put just a little bit in. You do not need very much, maybe like a couple centimeters at the most, and you'll get that going on your stove. Now, you can use other kinds of oil, but keep in mind that vegetable oil is going to be the one that is best for frying and for transferring the heat. You could use olive oil, for instance, if that's what you have, but it's not going to get as hot and it will take a little bit longer to heat up. But once again, if falafel is the only thing that you would need vegetable oil for, you can absolutely use other oil substitutes. Just keep in mind that the properties might change the cooking experience. So before I get started on going over how to craft the falafel balls, I will first turn on the stove. Now, vegetable oil, as I said, heats up really quickly. So make sure that you are going through like medium to medium low heat, depending on the kind of stove you have. No need to like put that on the stove and turn it all the way up to high. That is not only surely going to be something that will burn your falafels, but it could also be really dangerous because that would be very hot. And if you accidentally drop a falafel in there and it splashes, it will be not good, especially if we have some kids helping us in the kitchen today. So I'm going to turn this on. For my stove, it works for me to go to about a 5 or kind of a 5.5 or a 6. That'll get it going. Now, the way that you know that your oil is ready to put the falafels into is let it get heated up and it'll start to kind of ripple a little bit. It's nothing like water. And if your oil, is boiling like water, take it off that burner, let it cool down, and put it back on at a much lower temperature, more that medium low, and let it sit for a few minutes before you start going. You do not want to have some sort of McDonald's French frying vat going on in your own house. It's definitely not what we're going for, okay? So I'm going to let that get going, and I will make a few more falafel balls to get frying. So here we have this, we've got our consistency. I ended up just taking it out. You can, once again, you can do this directly from the food processor or blender, but once again, please don't stick your hand directly in there. So as you'll see, your consistency, you want to have it at kind of that like medium consistency. It's a little sticky, it's a tiny bit liquidy so that I can like really make it malleable, but I don't want to have it, you know, kind of melting or losing its shape on its own at all. If you're starting to see that, then that's when you would maybe go in and add a little bit more flour. I have that. Okay. Kind of get a little bit. It's not going to be like a cookie dough. That's another thing to keep in mind. You know, cookie dough is going to be a little bit kind of stickier, tougher. Falafel dough, the falafel, you know, batter should be definitely a little bit more liquidy than that. So don't put in flour to the point that you end up being able to use a cookie cutter on it, for example. All right. So it's looking like we're going to have just maybe another minute or so on waiting for the oil to heat up. But when it comes to how to put it into the pan, I would highly recommend using a spatula with a non-stick surface, dropping it directly in. Once again, even though we're only doing medium heat, we're not doing the full like McDonald's, you know, bat fryer, but you still want to have it to be able to slip it in. You can use a spatula, you can use a cooking spoon to be able to turn everything over. However, I personally like to use a spoon and a fork, just really simple things, or 2 forks to be able to control with both sides of my hand and to minimize any sort of splashing of the cooking oil. All right, so we're gonna take these and we will get started. In order to check and see whether your cooking oil is ready to go, you can always take just a little bit. This is actually all frying. You take just a pinch of whatever you're about to fry. So it can be like your bread batter, in this case, your falafel dough, and you can just stick it on, and the way that it reacts in the oil, it'll kind of give you that little like hissing sound, and you'll see that it floats. That lets you know that your oil is ready. All right, our oil is ready to go. So I've got my 2 forks. I'm out of spoons, unfortunately, so I guess we'll do 2 forks today. All right, so as I said, we'll take your spatula, get it under one of your falafels. Need 3 hands for this task. All right, and then we'll come over here. And for me, with my fork, I'm going to put it into the oil. There it goes. A little trick, you can do one at a time, but you definitely don't have to. But as you're going through and doing this, I would recommend putting in your falafels at 12, 3, 6, and 9. If you're going to do far more than that, that way you know how many you've put in, and you can time how long it's been until you turn them over. So it doesn't become random while some are undercooked, some are overcooked. All right. So I'll do just a couple. All right, so they're in. We'll get them going, and I'll just turn them over. I'm gonna remove this so you can kind of see what's going on behind me. You can see how they're starting to really bubble and get going. This one's definitely starting to brown. When I was saying 12 and 6, this is 12, this is 6, so I know I'm gonna be turning that one a little bit sooner. All right. that level of bubbling that you just saw, that's kind of a good, safe level of bubbling. It's going to do the trick 100%, but without posing any sort of unnecessary safety risks. All right, so I'm going to flip the first one. I'll give the second one just a little bit more time. So now I've flipped. You can kind of see what's going on here. This one will need to be flipped just about once I've set this on. We're starting to get like nice and brown right around the edges. This is good. This shows you that like you're really getting cooked. You're going to want to go for that kind of like deep brown, and you want to cook through, but the inside, remember, isn't going to be cooked all the way through. That's how you get that nice moist inside. So let me flip this one. All right, we'll let them go a couple more turns, and then that will get us to kind of where we want to go. Like I said, the medium heat, it's going to do the job. It's going to do the job quickly. So you won't necessarily you don't need to plan for cooking for very long. It's one nice thing about frying; it takes very little time to actually cook. So I'm going to turn these one more time, let you see what they're starting to look like. All right, so you can see we're really gonna start to get that like nice crispy brown around the edges. Get that going. All right, so those little falafels are going to get finished up a bit later today, but I do have what we're eventually going to be going for completed. So here are 3 falafels that I made a bit earlier. As you can see, we've got that nice like brown color. The inside is still going to be nice and moist for when you put it on into like on pita, or if you decide to eat it in a salad, however you go for it. You'll notice though that the edges around these two got a little bit crisp, and that's because I had my oil up way too hot. I had it probably closer to that medium high range, and when I put it in, I was not able to control the browning of the falafel. So that's, you know, aside from the safety reasons, another reason why you want to make sure that you are controlling the temperatures. You're going to get that nice browning, that cook through and through with that nice moist center. But that's kind of what they should start to look like. All right. Well, we are getting close to the end of this class, but a quick tip as we're still discussing sustainability. A lot of the things that we used today have skins, for example, the onions, have peels, for example, the lemons, that don't need to go into the garbage. Another way to start to think sustainably is to think of ways that you don't throw away food. Food in a landfill actually doesn't break down because landfills are sealed. Oxygen is necessary in order to allow food to break down. So instead, what it creates is methane gas, which is extremely harmful to the environment. I would highly recommend finding ways. I know it's looking like we have some people who are outside of the DC area. That's awesome, and welcome to all of you. But if you're in the DC area, you do have a few ways to be able to compost. In times where we are not in quarantine, you can take your compost on a weekly or however often basis to the Saturday, Sunday farmers markets. It's also possible in DC to contract to have curbside composting. So they come and they pick up your compost the same way that they would pick up garbage. However, though, I will leave it up to you to find those companies and start those contracts, since I am not a sponsor for any of those people, or none of those people are sponsoring me, I guess I should say. Another thing, though, and a quick tip, is some things that you might use are actually really good to just keep in your own house if you have houseplants. Today, we did not use any bananas, any eggs, or any coffee, although I did have coffee this morning. But those three things are actually excellent as plant fertilizers, and they can be put together or they can be put into potted plants separately. I would highly recommend keeping them. After you've used them, you can leave it in a bucket under maybe your sink or near your trash bin. When it comes time to use it, you would just ground up those different ingredients, and then you can sprinkle them over your plant. Especially for bananas. You probably don't want to just put a full banana peel in, but coffee grounds or even eggshells, you can kind of grind up with your fingers and put those in. Loads of nutrients. Plants absolutely love them. It's like really great. Eggshells are especially good if you have tomatoes. You'll end up with a really, really fantastic tomato harvest that year. And then another thing that we talked about and that I mentioned a bit earlier is maybe you can't eat or use it to fertilize, but we did end up with seeds from our lemons. So another thing you can think of doing is growing yourself a lemon tree. And if you are interested in learning different ways to grow your own food, Citizens Climate Classes DC is also doing a 3-part series on growing food. It's called Growing Together. And you can link into our Instagram and Twitter accounts to learn more about that, and also to catch up on the classes that have already happened, and to hopefully join us for the class that will be taking place in 2 weeks. So in conclusion, it's been so wonderful to spend this hour with you. I've really enjoyed it. I would ask that you follow Citizens Climate Classes on Instagram. We're at Climate Classes, and on Twitter also at Climate Classes. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and look for updates. We also have a Facebook page to come. We're pretty new, so kind of getting up on our social media game. Thank you so much. Please stay safe. Be well, and I hope you all are able to enjoy these recipes.